Good evening, everyone. This is Autistic Radio, Spectrum Voices Conversation Live. And welcome back to the broadcast, the 555. I'll hand over to Jules.
Thank you, Harry. It's so good that we have a team here where if I'm off making a cup of coffee, Harry will step in and say, "We're live, let's talk." I've only got a few things to talk about in the little section about Autistic Radio and the charity that we formed ourselves as autistic people, Autistic Association. I want to remind us what we're doing here, because it looks from the outside sometimes as though we're just a podcast. You know, podcasts are very important. People take a specialist subject and they continue to talk about that specialist subject, and that is absolutely fantastic. But we're trying to do something broader here, and we're very successful at it so far, and we will obviously expand it more as we go forward. We're not just one subject podcast, we take on subjects. So if there's a subject that you think we should be looking at, in the past we've looked at getting a seat at the table and co-production. We've introduced different people with their enthusiasms through the short introduction series. And we've taken on the tricky subject of ABA and behaviourism, amongst others. But I want to remind us that we're doing something else. And the reason of that is because I looked at the broadness of where we're reaching. We reach every part of the world except Antarctica. There are people listening to us literally everywhere, and we thank you for that. In a moment, we're going to be joining Harry for the 5:55 PM in GMT. You're going to have to sort that out if you're in Mumbai or Brazil or wherever you are, and find out where that is for you. But then it does become a podcast, so you can access it. And then there's a 444 drop-in. Again, GMT time. And that's a very free-flowing conversation where people bring along something, and whoever's there in that room talks about how that relates to autism. Nobody decides the subject just comes. These parts of what we're doing, these live discussions, these live, heartfelt, almost unmasked discussions, because we're never fully unmasked if we know that other people are listening to us, are important for the part of the project where people who are not autistic can listen to the autistic experience much more closely to the reality for us than if it's you asking us the questions, if it's you making a forum, if it's you deciding the format. And I want you to listen to this if you are one of those many autism professionals that are out there. The unique resource that we are offering you here is to hear us speaking fairly naturally. And that's part of science. Observation. Observation is before you decide what is the thing you're going to test for. It comes before the premise. So here we open ourselves out as a group and in varying ways for you to observe us and use what you observe to apply to your work. We hope that you will feel reasonably comfortable. But we also know that some of what we say will be challenging to you, especially if you're working in the behaviourist sciences. But if you're a scientist, that's what you're supposed to do. Be challenged and observe and change your ideas and make your hypothesis according to what you observe. Harry, you have a full curation of topics for us to look at the Autistic Radio Facebook page. So please, take the mic away from me.
Thanks, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is Spectrum Voices Conversation. Good evening, everyone. This is the Facebook part of the broadcast. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 2nd of February 2025. This is where we share and discuss the Facebook posts that's on our Facebook page. And the first post is from Little Puddings IE, which is an education website, Amanda McGuinness from Ireland. And what they've shared is about Surviving the Storm, a free autism storm advice guide to support families in crisis for the past 10 days. Say that again. What Little Puddings has shared has, say that again, Surviving the Storm, free autism storm advice guide to support families in crisis. For the past 10 days, my family and I have been without power, navigating the realities of daily life in the dark, in the cold, and without the basic comforts that so many of us take for granted. While this has been an incredibly challenging time, it has also reaffirmed something I've always known. That's why, despite our own struggles, I made the decision to create a free autism storm advice guide. A resource designed specifically to help families prepare for and manage the challenges of storms, power outages, and extreme, overwhelming sudden change and uncertainty can be for autistic individuals and their family. That's why, despite our struggles, I made the decision to create a free autism storm advice guide, a resource designed specifically to help families prepare for and manage the challenges of storms, power outages, and extreme weather conditions. As an autism individualist support specialist, autistic advocate, and parent, I know firsthand how overwhelming sudden change and uncertainty can be for autistic individuals and their families. My goal is to ensure no family feels unprepared, unheard, or unsupported through these difficult times. And it goes into great detail about the advice guide and just general information for what people might find resourceful. What's other people's thoughts?
I just had a little quick look through the website, linked it, and a really quick look at some of the free resources on there, and they look like the stuff that I would, the kind of style that I find quite helpful. And I think everybody's different, but like I really do like a little breakdown of what to expect and in a new situation, and I like a how-to guide. What's the Reader's Digest, how to fix anything, or how, and I love a survival book as well. So her guides look really nice and simple for things like that. And I do think there's definitely times even for myself. So I'd imagine for younger autistic people, it would be similar. But the more stress I've got going on, the easier it is for my head just to kind of just stop and not be able to process anything else. So for me, having those external supports are quite helpful sometimes.
Yeah, I think this is in relation to the storm Ewan, which in many parts of Ireland and the UK um, was like record breaking in terms of the severity of it. And it felt strange for me as an autistic middle aged man living on his own. And it was like a warning it came for days at least. And it felt in many ways waiting for not the end of the world, but something severe that a lot of the area was going to get destroyed, not damaged but destroyed. And it was a weird feeling sitting in the house expecting that and knowing the time it's about to happen and the warnings that are coming from the local authorities, the Scottish and UK government doing the alarm tones message on the mobile phone gave me a fright a few times. I know I could have turned it off, but I kept forgetting to. And because of the kind of work that I do, I'm an admin of a notice board, for Alexandria Town, as through the Alexandria Community Council. And what I do is share a lot of information, and the information was like school wasn't going to be on the Friday, services weren't going to be running, trains were cancelled, buses were cancelled, shops were closing. It was just like everybody was going away and be as safe as possible, except the ones that couldn't in certain jobs, unfortunately. And it just felt so strange. But it felt weird, and I felt so useful as well because I was given all this information, and keeping it in one place, which was probably helpful for people. So a guide based on that experience would be very helpful for a lot of people, and especially people with children, because it can be tough. I mean, I was in Florida in 1998, and this was just before I was diagnosed, and there was a tornado warning while I was there, and that was frightening. And there was alarms and warnings being given through the news and all that. And obviously now it's to Facebook and stuff. It's felt so similar to that, and it was quite frightening. And during it, thankfully things weren't as bad for me as they were for others. It just felt sort of surreal as when's this going to calm down, when's things going to get back to so-called normal again. So yeah, it was some experience, and it may have been a very bad experience for so many people.
Harry, did your ears pop at all during it, especially overnight before it arrived early in the morning? Because apparently it was a wee bit worse in the West Coast, although not as bad as, say, Ireland or Northern Ireland. But I heard a lot of people talk about their ears popping, and anybody with ear problems would have this issue of like something feeling like it dislocated around about the jaw. Because I definitely had that. It was weird.
No, I didn't get that. I've got to say. Um, just getting the fright for the government me text messages of warning, do not get out your house. There's a major red alert for storm, danger to life, blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, I get it. I'm not going out the house. And the weird thing is my friend of mine was actually going to come down to visit, and he's been wanting to visit for a long time, but he's been unable to due to work and family stuff. He's just not been able to be free, and he was actually managing to actually be free, and he couldn't go, and I told him, don't go, the trains will be cancelled anyway, but there's a storm coming, so yeah. But no, there was no ear popping. I've had that elsewhere, but not before this storm, no.
There's always that thing of you kind of want to underestimate or like, oh, they're exaggerating, they're being overcautious, but what if, sort of thing. So it did remind me of lockdown in a lot of ways, because even the shops were closed. That never happened in lockdown. And in lockdown, there was this sense of like, well, aren't they over exaggerating?
Yeah, there's that sort of thing about people not wanting to be told what to do or be controlled by authority. The government, the council, the police, whatever. So, and there's also that thing about what makes news is exaggerated headlines, and that's what people see and read and maybe believe. And there's always that cynic within me, at least, that things that are predicted, especially weather, because weather's it's hard to predict in the UK apparently because of where it's located. You think it's not going to be as bad as they were predicting, but sometimes they can be right. I mean, you can only be so wrong so many times before you actually hit the nail on the head. So, but I wasn't taking any chances when they say red alert. Absolutely not. And I actually enjoyed being at home.
It's amazing how freaked out you get when you're a property owner and you start watching these trees blowing about. But something Nicola said, yeah, about the self-help books and whatever, and mend it books. There's this thing about an opportunity and a crisis. Sort of the old adage of like bringing out the best in people.
The next post is from Autistic Biker, who is a blogger. And what they've shared is the following quote. Do you ever get overwhelmed by how our real world is a genuine dystopian nightmare that everyone just keeps acting like it's normal? What's people's thoughts on that?
I have to say I don't get overwhelmed, if that's the most important word in that. But I am incredibly curious that we we do look like we're sleepwalking into all kinds of trouble. It's not just global warming, it's not just emerging diseases, but the politics that we have at the moment. And what do I feel about it? In the end, I feel interested and curious. And we joke about it at home, saying that it's really nice to have lived at this point in time when so much change has happened so radically from 1965 when I was born until now, and then actually to see the final chapter, to be there at the end, to see Armageddon. And it's probably an acceptance in myself that, as I said to some young men recently, that my perspective is incredibly different to theirs, because they were 26 and they were going to live to 36 and 46 and 56. And I said, well, look, I am 59 or nearly 60, and I'm only the 70 and the 80 are pretty, unusual and difficult parts of life. And unfortunately, there's a problem in that, because this resignation that comes with the older generation that actually have the power to change things is why we will continue to sleepwalk into this. So, no, I don't feel overwhelmed because I'm not young enough, but the young, I'm sure they do. Come on, computer. Oh, God, I can't get into golf.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if that was what the post was about. Because sometimes I feel that life itself and the way that things are, even now, before any extremes come into it, it's like there's this sort of society that's so unfair. It looks dystopian in many ways. But I don't think I feel overwhelmed. It just annoys me about the whole kind of attitude of things, the cynical attitude, the apathetic attitude. It's just, you see pockets of people trying to make change for the better, and I've been involved in many of that. Sometimes that can become overwhelming if you try to take on too many battles at once in terms of how to fix things or how to make things a little better. So the way I try and do it is do it bit by bit and just do my bit the way I can, and provide something positive for people in such a negative world. I mean, there are things kind of happening at the moment that is quite alarming. I mean, there is this rise of people trying to, if we're not talking about the United States, even talking about the UK, it's like there's people trying to reverse things because it doesn't suit them agenda, and they say it's a bad thing. The inclusion thing's bad. It's like that attitude. It's really frustrating, and the way they try to explain it is like they're not baddies, they're goodies. They're just wanting things to be as fair as possible and not have special cases and things like that. And I just think it's absolutely maddening. People seem to forget that life is complicated. Autistic or not, life is complicated. It's not as straightforward as many people would like you to believe it to be. So the way things are in terms of trying to be more inclusive in individuals, and it's only a good way forward. And I just wish people would understand that a bit more.
I think there's something incredibly valuable in what you said there, Harry, is that if you are working in some kind of way to make a tiny part, a tiny little corner, a little bit better, and taking part in something that's positive, the big stuff becomes less overwhelming. So being part of the change or being part of the solution instead of being part of the problem or reducing your aspects, all of the psychology says that making tiny little parts and differences has an enormous effect on your well-being. So if we're talking about whether people's mental health is being entirely affected by the doomsday, then what you said is really important. Just doing that tiny little thing in your community or reaching out in some way. In fact, the way we're doing things here at Autistic Rodeo is part of that. It started as a few guys in a garden shed, effectively, trying to reach out, and then it became something later, and that lifts me.
Was it you, Jules, who once said, you can't change the world, but you can change one person? And by the way, I wouldn't mind an autistic rodeo.
I think I may have said that, but I don't know where I got it from. I usually say things that other people have given to me and pass them on. Well, no, not always.
The next post is from the big dude, Life with Autism After 40, which is a personal blog. This is the story of the big dude, a 6 foot 5 inch tall, non-verbal ASD adult, and his mum and dad. And what they've shared is some pictures and a kind of little story, which I'll just read out. Big Dude has been an affectionate, helpful gentleman since we picked him up yesterday. We had fun at lunch at our favourite pizza place yesterday after we brought him home. I made a family favourite for dinner, rigatoni and Italian sausage with pesto sauce and lots of garlic. He cleared the table, loaded the dishwasher, then helped Dad with the pots and pans that had to be washed and dried by hand. He hummed his way through the drive home and for the rest of the day, with a lot of mama mas and a few calls of Dad. Dad went to bed early, but Dude and I stayed up to watch TV, with both of us falling asleep on the couch. Then he was awake at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m, with Dad and I taking turns getting up with him. Dad and I got up before 6 a.m, he slept until after 7:30. He put himself to bed by 9:30 this evening. Today has been another day with a lot of humming and happy vocalising. We had a great time today with lunch on the riverfront in St. Louis again, and then a visit to the giant Ferris observation wheel that we rode last summer. This time he was not a bit hesitant to get onto the gondola. Even though the weather was chilly, the gondola was warm and comfortable. Dude looked out the windows and enjoyed the views. We had a great time. We were all pretty tired this evening. Dude is in bed, Dad and I will be crashing soon. I hope he sleeps well. Dad and I could use an uninterrupted night's sleep. As an adult, Dude has generally had a normal sleep pattern, with a few disruptions. Dude had serious sleep problems for about 18 months between ages 4 and 6 years, rarely sleeping longer than 4 hours per night. As he got older, he slept well. In recent years, he sometimes wakes up between 5 and 6 a.m. He may sit in the kitchen or family room by himself until we come in to check in on him. Sometimes he comes into our bedroom and sits in the armchair on Dad's side of the bed, watching us doze. Generally he sleeps well at home with us. Since we had a split floor plan with his bedroom on the opposite side of the house from our bedroom, we've had motion detecting blank cameras from Amazon that let us know if he gets up during the night. The cameras also minimise the possibility of him raiding the fridge for a middle of the night binge. Do your kiddos of any age have sleep problems, including disruptions? Do you have any tricks to help get your kiddos to sleep, to get to bed, to get back to bed, or improve these sleep habits? Like many nurse mums, I've used Benadryl to help get Dude to sleep when he seemed to be trying to stay up all night. along with a warm bath to relax him. Good night, Team Big Dude. What's people's thoughts on this post?
I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of using a drug on your family. That feels like the wrong thing to be doing. And I noticed that they say that they've tried it, and it's not a big or often thing. So, if that's something that people are relying on regularly, I think there's a real negative there for me. The other thing about sleeping when you're an autistic person, I share this with my wife, is that as kids we were often awake. We were night owls. We were, we would read the story and then our brains would continue and they would continue. And I don't really think that there's any problem in that. I think if this autistic adult is continuing in that way, it seems to me that the world should adapt to them, not that they should have to adapt to the world. So allow the person, in my book, to have an unusual sleep pattern. It usually is the case for most people that eventually they get tired. It used to be for me that I would read a book or I would have an activity, and it may be for this adult, it might just be a stim. I know it's complicated, and I know it's really difficult when you're looking after an adult in the same case as the big dude here. But there's a general message that's going out there for other people. Intervention is not always the best thing for people. Just creating good sleep hygiene and allowing people to be who they are.
Yeah, Kathy has shared a comment saying they completely agree. Being diagnosed, I was given so many wrong medications. It's just another accommodations we are making, and it is exhausting. And I agree with that. I know, as Jules says, it's complicated. It's parents looking after the child in adulthood, and they're wanting to do or trying to do the best they feel they can to protect and help and the person. But from my position reading that, it did give me a bit of discomfort seeing that being put in as, I don't know if it's a recommendation, but it's more like it's something that has been tried from their perspective. Talking about sleeping patterns, I've never really slept that well, and I do remember as a child it took me a while to settle down. What I used to do is basically daydream. Being someone who was picked on and bullied quite a lot, who already felt different, and was long away from any diagnosis which came later, I used to daydream. I'll just have these thoughts, and just like if something was different, if things were a bit better, so this sort of kind of fantasy thinking that life being better, and then you sort of feel like you're kind of living it, and then sometimes you fall asleep, you even dream it, although it's not very nice when you actually wake up and realise it isn't real. But it took me ages to settle down to sleep, especially when I had issues at school and I was dreading the next day, so I couldn't relax to sleep. And the one thing that I do remember is I shared a bedroom with my brother, who was 8 years younger than me, and I used to have to open the window, or one of the windows in the bedroom, so that I could get fresh air, so I could breathe, because I felt I was palpitating. I just felt I couldn't breathe. It was all stuffy. But they made the room very cold. And then I'm thinking, my poor brother will be freezing. So I get what a lot of things have been said, but everybody's different. I understand that.
I've got another thing to say, and it's about what was necessary for me as a child. And it's about what you were saying there, Harry. I needed a very long slowdown for me to deal with the day, you know. And I think that's true as an adult as well. It's part of my need to process. I might not have processed everything that I have been confronted with during a day, even as an adult. If I'm in business, there's things to. If something's gone wrong, I need the time, and I don't need to be asleep at that time. I need to have it resolved before I sleep. And that might be what a lot of people that are being cared for are experiencing, the need to be awake. And I just hope that some of the parents out there will allow that a bit and give the kid a bit of a breathing space, because you can't get them to be like you. They have to be themselves. I also got somebody who was expecting to join us here, and I think they were expecting perhaps to join the drop-in, the 444 that happened before this. But we're now in the live broadcast, and usually people don't join for the first time to go straight into the live broadcast. But if they want to, I'm going to put the link here publicly for the live broadcast. So if anybody is contacting us at the moment in different places, please be certain that you will be live if you do join this link.
Thanks, Jules. And Kathy said it's 5 a.m. where they are, so not saying anything. That's the thing we were talking about earlier on in the introduction, is that we are global, and there'll be different time zones all over the world. I mean, right now in UK time is just after 6:30 p.m. and there's people that are joining us in the middle of the night, 5 a.m, very early in the morning, afternoon times, evenings. It just shows you how well wide we are. And it's good that gets shared, because it just makes you, it's a positive thing about, sometimes I feel I'm stuck in one little world, but then you listen to or read other people's experiences with different times and different cultures, etc. It kind of broadens the mind, and it actually gives a positive feeling. The next post is from Neurodivergent Rebel, who's a public figure named Lyric Vieira, they, them, gender fluid, pansexual, polyamorous and multiply neurodivergent, educator, artist and best-selling author of Workplace Neurodiversity Rising. And what they've shared is basically just a promotion of what they do. And they say, Neurodivergent Rebel is an autistic advocate, writer and troublemaker, dismantling neuro and heteronormativity one rant at a time. Follow my work for unflinching takes on neurodiversity, justice, human rights and smashing the status quo. Please feel free to share your pages, arts, projects, crowdfunding links in their comments if you have them as well. What's people's thoughts?
Well, I think I actually responded because this came up on LinkedIn as well. I love a few things about this. And one is the phrase autistic advocate, writer, and troublemaker in brackets, because this idea that if you say no, you are a troublemaker, and then owning it and say yes, if you are wrong, we do have to say to you sometimes, we're going to make trouble out of this. We're going to change. If we can't change things without being seen as troublemaker, and then she's talking about, sorry, they. My apologies. I do apologise. They are talking about dismantling the heteronormative experience, and there's a tongue-in-cheek thing that they're using, one rant at a time. But look, everybody has a different purpose within the advocacy movement. Some people are protesters. Some people are working under the radar in education. Some people are working through research. Here we're doing another thing, which is to bring the autistic experience to public attention, possibly in a slightly less troublemaker kind of way than Lyric Riviera. In a podcast that I've recorded with Tim's, what's her name? Is it Kathy Tim? Oh dear, that's terrible. I'm so bad with these things. She, as a educator and within the education system in Canada, Karen Tim, was talking about Lyric and saying how it was inspiration from Lyric early on that then has moved her towards advocacy and even moved her towards her own understanding. So, good on the people who are troublemakers. We're not all taking that role, but good on them,
Yeah, totally agree. That tag, troublemaker, it's meant to be a word that's supposed to throw you off and put you down, but it's good that people can bite back and say, okay, I'll take that mantle. If that's what you describe me, that's what you describe me. I'll own that. I'll own that term. I mean, I think, I've not been called it, but I think that through my different endeavours, through the local tenants and residents associations and community councils, that I may be known as a troublemaker because I do a lot of letters, and a lot of it is as politely as possible, but they're always genuinely complaints about things, particularly towards Western Berkshire Council regarding service or lack of it and all different things. And I recall, I think it was Friday, that I was sending these letters, and then I was sending different things, and people must think I'm a troublemaker, but I don't care if they do. I love it because I'm not making trouble. I'm basically asking questions, and if they're uncomfortable with it, tough, because that's what I'm there to do. I'm not in these committees just to be a bum on seat and do nothing. Some people like to do that, but I certainly don't. As I said earlier, I like to make things a little bit better, and a wee bit of change, or at least trying to make some positive change. But that troublemaker thing, yeah, a lot of people have been called that, and a lot of people have been put down by that, but it's good to see someone that takes it on board and says, yes, you're right, you will listen to me.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking back to when I was a student nurse, I'd gone into a ward where it was really clear that there was some really big problems, and I think it's definitely for me felt like part of my autistic experience was not being aware of the fact that other people wouldn't just be like, oh, great, thanks for helping us see this problem so that we can fix it. It didn't occur to me that they would actually be glad of the dysfunction, because it was a status quo that they'd found a position of like power in. I was assaulted at work because I was pointing out the problems by it was a member of staff, and it was really, it was like, don't you dare come in here thinking that you can change anything, was the attitude. So what she's saying there about the troublemaker in quotes, I think it's I think we can be quite vulnerable to like interpersonal but also state violence when we are truth tellers, are kind of whistleblowers.
Yeah, I can totally believe that. Especially if you're challenging authority, even if something is very wrong and it's very obviously wrong and needs change, it's like a comfortable position for many people due to power or just because it just suits them whatever way. And then to be challenged by someone, especially if someone's fairly new to something that they've done for a long time, they take that very badly. Uh, Certainly don't condone violence in anyone on that, and I don't condone that attitude either. I think that's disgraceful what happened to you, but I can totally believe that that can happen to people, and that's why many people don't actually do so.
It's something that makes me feel really worried, is the anti-intellectualization, the way that that's becoming, getting that perspective's getting a foothold in society, because it was that was what was kind of used against me, was because I was coming from a university as a student, and they, you know, they saw the threat that they saw, because we were like, whereas I was actually from the same like background as them, but our commonality was just lost.
I think, Nicola, you are describing a very common experience of autistic people. We do expect people to want to do things that are better. And when we whistleblow and when we point out that we could do it a different way, it becomes difficult for all the structures that have been organised on this competition basis and hierarchy. So it's not understood by the people that are willing to try and work to help us in the various ways that we often need help, that as a group we are actually fighting against a kind of racism, a kind of, we are so different that we are intentionally excluded with our ideas and with our knowledge. It's used against us, and there's this, they call it ableism and they call it an internalized ableism, but sorry, not an internalized ableism, they call it an ableism. But the more I think about it, the more you go into the neurodiversity paradigm, the more it's about one particular kind of group against another, and it's the majority against the minority. Ray, I think you'd have to say that for yourself, mate.
The next post is from Embrace Autism, which is a mental health service science website diagnostics centre. Research-based information and empowerment by autistics for autistics. Embrace your advantages. And what they've shared is about extreme demand avoidance, and it's in the Extreme Demand Avoidance Questionnaire for Adults, EDAQA, which is a self-administered questionnaire that measures traits and behaviours related to pathological demand avoidance, PDA, in adults. And the basic information is that there's 26 statements, it's 10 to 15 minutes, it's a screen tool type, and the authors are Vincent Egan, Omar Lindenberg, and Elizabeth O'Nyans, and it was published in 2018. And it says Extreme Demand Avoidance Questionnaire for Adults. Oh, so I've already said that. I'll read this one again. The Extreme Demand Avoidance Questionnaire for Adults, EDAQA, is a self-administered questionnaire that measures traits and behaviours related to pathological demand avoidance, PDA, in adults age 18 and above, with IQ in the normal range of 80. What's people's thoughts on this particular questionnaire? Are people aware of it?
I think I had a read of that article earlier and a look at the test that was shared. I like that Embrace Autism website, and I think it helped me understand what the difference between feeling like wanting to avoid a demand and have this PDA experience. So I scored quite low very low on the test, and so all I know is that's not how my brain works. But I thought it sounded quite like it's a very different way of having a brain working than my own. It was quite interesting to have a look at.
Like you, Nicola, I have a bit of trust about Embrace Autism, but when this PDA thing comes up, I'm really uncomfortable because I've seen this PDA being labelled on people so often, when the reality is that the demands that they're trying to avoid seem to me entirely reasonable. So PDA has been used to suppress people, especially women, because they're supposed to shut the fuck up and get with the program and do what they're supposed to be told. So I find generally when I see the word PDA, I have a reaction against it. But then the differentiation they're making in this is about extreme PDA. So maybe this is what the idea of PDA was designed for in the first place. But overall, I tend to be very uncomfortable about it. I want to go back to earlier when we were talking about whistleblowing and being against the grain. In the text, the scarcity mindset tells us that we have no alternative but to be normal and play the game. So we are society and so many different institutions tries to make sure that we are competing with each other for scarce resources. So we have to take that into our choices and our thinking, and it goes away into the whole capitalist model of that if we don't work, we die. We're competing against each other for scarce resources. It's put upon us, where the resources don't need to be scarce at all. You know, that's an artificial thing that's created by the hierarchical structures.
I feel that there's something connecting this post to what we were talking before about in a previous post we were talking about the parents who were talking about their adult son who understands a non-verbal communicator staying awake at night, and then we're talking about this construct of extreme PDA, and I've heard before that it described that people that are labelled with that, who experience that, who that's their diagnosis, it makes sense, whichever one of those, that it's like they have an extreme stress response. It's like a real kind of trauma and sort of fight flight response to these demands. But it would make sense to feel like that if you were if you're being forced out of what you need. And we've been able to articulate about needing, like Jules was saying, about staying up to process something. And I know like autistic people who like living nocturnally is like so much better for them. And surely we could adjust to being like, there's I don't know, I just don't feel like I think we maybe have to fit into such a rigid rules in society that can't accommodate too much difference. And I think that can be quite traumatic to be invalidated like that.
Thanks, Harry. I feel as though the parents are doing their absolute best, their utmost, from their own points of view to benefit their kids or their adult kids in the circumstances, because they themselves want the child to fit within society in a way that reduces some of the stresses. So they see the stresses that the child is under and they're trying to find solutions for it. Unfortunately, the reality might be that they are part of it. And that is incredibly hard for parents to get a grip on. We've talked to a couple of parents now. I'm thinking one particularly, Virginia Bovell, a PhD researcher, but also somebody who has an autistic son in a difficult situation, and they have come to realize that when they were advocating for behaviorism and created a behaviorist school, that they may have dealt with it better if they had taken more of a lead from their son than trying to help their son by normalizing things. So it's such a horrible situation when people like us adults are saying to parents, because the parents are trying so hard. And I don't want us to come across as in opposition to parenting, because we're not. We just might have a little bit of feeling and insight that with a chance, listening to us a bit, some things will come across to you that might help you with your kids and your adult kids.
The next post is from Dogs for Autism, which is a charity organisation, non-profit organisation, also animals. Our vision is to train and provide assistance dogs at no charge to autistic people of any age anywhere in the UK who will significantly benefit, enriching lives, expanding horizons. And what they've shared is an exciting opportunity alert. Would you like to help a trainee assistance dog on their journey to becoming a life changer? Are you looking for a way to give back, make a real difference, and meet amazing people along the way? We're looking for a passionate, enthusiastic local volunteers to join us for an unforgettable experience. Puppy Parent Stage 1. We are regularly looking for puppy parents who are home for the majority of the day and would love to provide a home to a young puppy. Full support is given and all costs are covered. Puppy Parent Stage 2. Would you love to look after a dog but are at work all day? You could have one of our young adult dogs for bed and breakfast and weekend fun. The dog would come to school every day, returning to you in the evening and for the weekend. Holiday cover. We are always on the lookout for loving holiday cover for our dogs while their puppy parents take a break. If you are local to Alton, Hampshire, and would like to get involved, please register for your interest in the link provided. Most people's thoughts on this?
That's incredible that they're providing this service free. That was my first thought.
Well, considering they're looking for volunteers, I mean, they've got to give something back to balance it out a bit, because for all the good that it is, it's still a major commitment for anyone to take on. But yeah, you're right.
Hampshire, that's the south of England, isn't it? Right in the coast. Southampton, is it?
Well, it says Alton. Is that not the Midlands in England? Or am I just thinking about Alton Towers, or is that actually where the name is from? I'm just making assumptions here.
I'm just wondering if it's an area that might have, I don't know, a surplus of dogs. It's looking for an arrangement that might be positive for. I can't see that. I can't see that anywhere's got a surplus of dogs. So it does sound generous, doesn't it?
It's certainly a great opportunity for people. I mean, I like seeing these things and I like sharing these things about, opportunities for volunteer or opportunities like job as well. To be part of something, so positive and so inclusive and being part of that journey. I mean, it must be a great feeling to be part of that, because I know that I've been part of different things that I know is doing for the greater good, and being involved in that is such a nice feeling to know that you're part of something so positive and something that's looking to help others.
I have a neighbour who takes well, she worked with guide dogs and she would bring them home sometimes, so she's kind of fostering them to an extent, but I don't think it was permanent, and it's a big responsibility, and she was like really, really good with dogs.
The next post is from Spectrum Gaming, a charity organisation. We are a charity for autistic young people to help develop connections, self-acceptance and support, based in the UK. And what they're sharing is their barriers to education update and workshops, and sharing their plans for 2025. Phase 1 is warmth, guidance, burnout recovery and neuroprofiling tool. Phase 2 is warmth audit tool, and Phase 3 is guidance for individual services and areas. And it goes on to say, thank you so much everyone for all your support and input into barriers of education work. Spectrum Gaming has no dedicated funding for barriers to education, so it has been very difficult to keep working on things alongside running a rapidly growing charity. Last year our paid staff team doubled from 10 to 20. We got our first ever building and we opened a learning community. As a result, and due to the scale of the project, progress is a bit slower than we were initially hoping for. But we are just as committed as ever, and everyone's input has been crucial for getting us to where we are. Thank you. What's people's thoughts? Further information they provided was the barriers to education has been recognised as good practice by the Centre for Young Lives, with a report published in partnership with N8 universities. The link provided. As a result of barriers to education, I've been invited to meet with the Department for Education and Children's Commissioner team to discuss and share recommendations around severe absence and long-term school non-attendance. We are working with the National Association of Principal Educational Psychologists to discuss the adoption of warmth, WARMTH, as best practice for principals, as best practice principles. Rachel Lyons and Sharon Cochrane, members of the Barriers to Education Steering Group, recently presented at the North West Educational Psychology CBT conference on barriers to education. Unfortunately, I missed it due to illness and I was gutted. The next steps. We have adjusted the timescale for barriers to education with the hope that phase 1 of the website will be live by April, and the website will hopefully be completed by September. In the short term, we have a small team of writers, including Tim the EP, Alice, specialist outreach teacher, and Beth from Not Fine in School, public page, school attendance difficulties, who have been working on the case for change and warmth education information, and teams working on burnout recovery and neuroprofiling are making awesome progress. There's live writing sessions in Bury. We'd like to meet in person on the 18th, 19th and 20th of February at Spectrum Gaming's headquarters to complete some live writing and make some solid progress with some of the work we are doing. Working in small groups, rotating between the different sections and creating across 3 days. We love for people to attend any of this, whether it's morning, a full day or 3 days, to help us get things ready for April. If you would be available to help and have a good understanding of what we're trying to achieve with Barriers for Education, please register the interest in the link provided. You can find more information about what we're planning to work on and the venue in another link provided. The plan is for these days to be practical, with lots of writing and doing, so please bring a laptop or tablet if you can, though we do have a few that can be used too. So it's a lot of things. It's kind of basically relating to the school difficulties that autistic people have and the barriers, and what we've kind of talked many times before about how schools in many ways have been trying to normalise autistic children, but there's ways forward to challenge that, and even stories shared that schools are a lot better now than it was, for instance, when I was in school in the late 90s.
Any idea what live writing is?
Well, I've just been having a little sleuth about their Facebook page, and it sounds like they're an organisation who work to they work for autistic young people, and it sounds like they're managing to do a lot of work to give a platform so that autistic young people can give their opinions about stuff. But I've just found a give up guide that they've made, and I thought that people might appreciate it. It says, if life gives you lemons, squeeze them in people's eyes. You're naturally funny because your life is a joke. And then there's some mindful colouring that you can do as well. There's an affirmation. Every dead body on Mount Everest was once a highly motivated person, so maybe calm down. And I just thought that was really good. But they've got other it sounds like they've been holding online events, in-person events, and yeah, helping young people meet others with shared experience. Yeah, I thought it was good that at first I didn't understand what it was about, but then it does sound like they are really trying to give feedback on why young people aren't able to, why people aren't getting to school and things.
The live writing, I think, is basically being part of the process of the research and the writing that they're doing. So I think that's what live writing actually means, but I may be wrong on this.
Jules, you were going to come in?
Yeah, what about you, mate? You go first.
No, I just got slightly confused because see, I see Spectrum Gaming. I see the word gaming and I get all weird, because I'm just not into gaming. But when I saw that, I thought, are they doing coding or something? But I thought it's nothing to do with gaming. It's they're just related to this in some way that is helping with funding or something for educational purposes. So live writing's part of a process they've got going, working in small groups, rotating between the different sections and creating across 3 days. So, because I'm into that kind of free form thing where you work with things. It's like live editing music, when if you've ever done that with computers and laptops, just like in the moment creation. But they've probably got intentions and goals that they're trying to achieve. But any kind of free expression, I'm curious about.
Yeah, I think Spectrum Gaming was how this started. They got together. There were people that were gamers, and getting kids together through gaming was a way of reaching, and it's gone beyond that now. There's something about this that seems trustworthy, and I have a very stark contrast because I have a different reaction to something that I've been sent recently by an ally of autistic people with neurodivergence in their own family. And it was about a consultation exercise asking a very small group of autistic individuals and also a group of professionals separately from each other about the concept of peer support. And as I started to read the conclusions and the support in the report, I couldn't help but believe that the kids were being asked questions that they couldn't possibly answer, and then the adults were making conclusions from it. And I was dismayed, because it looks to me as though this report about kids in school being their own support group has actually ended up missing out on the insight that neurodivergent people, if they had been involved in any kind of observation capacity, could have helped ameliorate. It felt to me as though what was intended in the best possible way to be a consultation ended up being a neurotypical construction, because they just don't fucking get us.
The next post is something, if Jules would Nicola like to, is just sharing, the podcast regarding the travelling autistic with Jules and Nicola. And it says basically in the description, travelling autistic, Mumbai to Goa with Jules Barton, and this was the 4th episode. And the quote shared is, "Autistics don't travel. It's too much for us. We're a disabled group." Well, not always. Jules shares with Nicola about his travels in India, different and similar takes on the travel experience. And do you have a thought, travel for Nicola to share? And Nicola's email address from Autistic Radio has been shared. And this was recorded on the 31st of January 2025 with a runtime of 43 minutes. So anybody want to add to this? I just thought it was worthwhile sharing after the kind of difficult topics we've been touching on.
I like these people, Harry. I think they have a refreshing take on the autistic experience.
Oh, thank you, Raymond, for lightening the mood. How are you finding it, dealing with it, Nicola, talking to me about these things? Because I think you said to me it's a bit intense.
I think I wish I'd sent a picture of my setup last time I spoke to you, because I just needed to ground myself. So I got all my best rocks and I had them surrounding my computer and me, and I could just hold they were like my biggest, darkest, heaviest rocks. And it stopped me from sort of floating away and feeling like I was out of my body, trying to kind of look at like see India through your eyes. So I thought that was quite interesting, and I wondered if anybody else gets ungrounded when they're talking to other people.
I appreciated, Nicola, what you said there. You referred to it in part 4, I think, about empathy. Yeah, the empathy thing, about how you had your own personal experience where somebody was relating a story to you and you almost passed out listening to it. And so listening to somebody's experiences, traveling, in a foreign clime, and something very alien to anything you might do yourself, can be, if you have hyper empathy, quite triggering and quite intense. Yeah.
It's been good to learn about myself, because I'm learning now that I feel like I get that empathic experience over the top of anything that's going on for me as well. So it's helping me to recognise where my own sort of self-care needs a little bit, so that I'm able to be ready to connect to other people like that. And I'm really recognising that I need like time on my own just to think, and I need quite a lot of that.
But we can't just do anything. We have to take care of ourselves sometimes and respect our needs.
What it reminds me of, what we're talking about, is my fleeting mind, my wandering mind. It's like if you speak to someone and they're talking about experiences and they're just talking about something interesting, their experience. It just, there's a lot of these ideas that pop into my head that I'm dying to do right at that moment, and it takes a bit of discipline just to stay focused, write it down, look at it later. You don't need to look at it now because I've got a hell of a habit of, and I suppose being on the laptop doesn't help sometimes. I've been at meetings where something's gave me an idea, and because you can actually see me in these meetings, because it's Zooms, I can actually kind of do kind of these emails and then sometimes tighten up something completely irrelevant to the meeting I'm in because I'm not talking at the time. And I'm trying to say to myself, just calm down, you don't need to let your mind wander, just stay grounded into what you're actually dealing with at that particular time. Don't be in a rush. But sometimes it's very difficult to hold because sometimes an idea just pops in and I have to deal with it now before I forget, even though it's unlikely that I will forget.
I think the thing about the format that we've got here is that there's a pause button. Whenever anybody listens to a podcast and something either inspires them or touches them or they have an empathy with it, they can pause it and then they can go off and do something else and then come back to it. And the other thing about what we're saying here is that we're putting the lie to this whole thing about how autistic people are not empathetic, and yes, of course we are. We're more empathetic. Usually we're the people that get into the experience. So these constructions that we've been dealing with for so long that need overturning, we're describing them here right now for you to listen to, listener.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when I was watching that Chris Packham documentary, and it was quite intense, and I had to pause it so many different times. There's so many times watching it because it was that intense and it was very close to the bone. It was a good watch and I enjoyed it, and sometimes I've actually did that with some podcasts too of our own. Some that I haven't been involved in, and we've talked about certain kind of issues, and I've had to pause and walk away, and then try to say to myself, "What you feeling bad about?" That's what the thing is for. I mean, to pause and listen to it again when you're ready, because so many things just kind of touch you, inspire you, sometimes even upset. It just depends what it is, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Although I haven't listened to the full podcast myself, what I do appreciate is the podcast of it's breaking down the stereotypes of autism. Here we are seeing someone travelling far away from home and doing it for a long period of time as well, and going to different places and a different culture, different environment, and it's so inspirational because myself, I'm someone that doesn't really travel that much and feel more like a homeboy sort of thing. Like I've never moved that far away from where I was born, and where I grew up was not that far away from where I live just now, and I've lived in the same house for nearly 24 years, so it's good to hear that different experience and things that I feel that I won't experience, not because I feel dread, it's just something I don't want to do, but it's nice to hear the story from people that actually do something different from yourself. So, yeah, it's much appreciated, and I'll need to sit down and listen to these because they must be very good.
I think they're quite good. we, we, we're giving the impression that they're overwhelming, and I don't think listening to them is quite the overwhelming experience that that Nicola, because obviously we're talking for a lot longer than the edits turn out. So, and when we're talking, there's a lot that we're dealing with that, I'm picking up on what Kathy in the comments over on one of the systems is saying. I am so over hearing, "We don't have empathy," exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. They literally pick the research to read that suits their agenda to demonize us. And that's a big face with an angry red look. And yeah, I think you can hear that I'm getting quite angry this evening, and I try not to. I do at the moment feel a little bit that it's a bit of an uphill struggle to get some of the people out there to really take on what they know intellectually, what they're working on intellectually, and then really put it into practice in autism professionals. And, occasionally we are just going to get a bit angry, aren't we?
Yeah, I just want to say I don't think that the podcast will be very overwhelming to listen to. I think it's just, but I think a lot of autistic people understand that making words with your mouth just sometimes stops being feasible, and it can be for all sorts of different reasons. So it was more of a subjective experience of overwhelm than um, I, I think something that will come across.
Yeah, it's about us making them, isn't it? And I am trying my best when I'm telling you these stories to actually have an effect. I'm trying my best to tell a story and use narrative to relate to the autistic experience, and you are intuitive to such a degree that that you're coming back with these things. So our experience might be something that we're doing so you don't have to, listener, and you get the nice thing to listen to afterwards.
Our final post for tonight is from Pete Warmby, autistic author. An autistic ADHD writer and speaker on autism and autistic lived experience. And what is shared is about t-shirts that he's made. Making silly t-shirts is my new hyper-focus, and I'm having a whale of a time. My favourite is probably the ghost one, to be honest. My entrepreneurship is basically random and bizarre, but I'm having fun at least. And it's free shipping this weekend. So it's through T-Mill Pro, and it's different t-shirts that are saying Pride Kids, Pride's Women's, Pride's Men's. Different, not deficient for men's long sleeved. Different, not deficient, women's long sleeve. Ghosts for women's and ghosts for men. Here too, all different ones that he has made, and it's because it's his new hobby, his new hyper focus, and is available to purchase for anyone interested. I just like sharing these things because it's amazing how a new interest can just escalate and become not time consuming, but just becomes this time filler. Even though that sounds pretty brutal. What I mean, it's good to read stuff like this, and I can identify with a lot. Although I don't do that particular sort of stuff, but I can understand the enthusiasm and the drive to do such things. What's other people's thoughts?
I hope the collars don't stretch. T-shirts are terrible these days.
I'm having a wee look at the store just now, and the mugs are really cool as well. I like the "Leave me alone, I'm in a monotopic flow state." Oh, there's nothing more annoying than getting interrupted when you're deep in one of those, eh?
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for tonight's discussion. That was good, a nice positive one to end with. Thanks for people taking part in the text as well as audio. And thanks to the people who have shared these posts that we've kind of discussed tonight with all these different topics and discussions that are generated from them. So this is the 555 Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 2nd of February 2025, which is part of Spectrum Voices Conversation here every Sunday. So thank you once again, and I'll hand over to Jules.
Welcome to Autistic Radio. This is the part of the show where we look at what we're doing here at Autistic Radio and through the charity that we formed for ourselves.